My story starts last year with DEC's Trek for Trout. DEC enlisted volunteers to fan out across the Adirondacks and post special signs with a QR code on them next to trout ponds. Unfortunately, the volunteers didn't get to every pond. One of the ones that was left over was Sand Lake in the Five Ponds Wilderness. I've been to Sand Lake before. It's a beautiful place and I was looking forward to going back. I had a destination, but there are 3 ways to get there. The first way is the way I've gone previously, which is to hike from Wanakina down the Wanakina Primitive Corridor, the High Falls Loop Trail, to the eastern terminus of the Sand Lake Trail, then take the Sand Lake Trail across the Oswegatchie River and all the way to Sand Lake. There is a section of that Sand Lake Trail between the High Falls Loop Trail and the Oswegatchie River that's notoriously flooded. That route's 15 or 16 miles. The second way, which I've never done before, follows a trail called the Borderline Trail from the end of Young's Road to the Buck Pond Primitive Corridor, which leads to a private in-holding around Buck Pond. But before you get to that, the trail veers off and heads to Cage Lake on the Cage Lake Trail. From Cage Lake, you follow the Wolf Lake Trail to Wolf Lake, and that intersects with the Sand Lake Trail. I'd never been that way before, so trying to gather some information. What I learned was the Buck Pond Primitive Corridor is rutted and muddy. Didn't sound great, but the advice I got was to follow the Buck Pond Primitive Corridor to Cage Lake because that is the shortest route. And there are sections of that Buck Pond Primitive Corridor that I was told were flat and level and hard and dry. Thought that was okay.
I wish the whole trail were like this. Unfortunately, you get just enough of this to get your hopes up, and then it turns back into a muddy, rocky, sloggy mess.
Where there are slopes and where there's water running down the trail, most of the fines have been washed out of the trail, leaving just stones and cobbles and boulders that are really hard on the feet to walk on, and ankle twisters. Some of what I read about the Buck Pond Primitive Corridor included a tidbit that some people missed the sign or the turnoff that takes the trail to Cage Lake compared to the Buck Pond Primitive Corridor, which goes down to the Buck Pond Club. That made me a little bit nervous as I started getting farther along on the trail. I was feeling optimistic, moving along on the Cage Lake Trail, and then I came to a flooded section. And I was able to see some bog bridging, but it was submerged. I thought the better option was to cross the beaver dam and then head back to the trail on the other side. Now I said this was not a highly used trail, so I walked back and forth a little bit. It was late, it was getting close to supper time, and so I grabbed a tuna packet, I ate that, and I decided I'd better, retreat.
The last thing I want to be doing is wandering around here lost by myself. So I'm going to abort the mission, turn around, and slog back to the car.
I looked across the flooded area, I scanned the shoreline, and I did find a landmark where the trail left that flooded area. On a big...
Coming back to the place I last had the trail was at least halfway smart. It's to the east of the beaver dam.
Now I had another choice. Do I go back across the beaver dam, head up the trail, or do I just call it quits, say this was all a sign, and it's time to go home? Well, I was way more than halfway there. I was almost there. I'd probably be better off if I just push ahead, get to the lean-to, have some dinner, get set up, and crash for the night. Until I came to this.
Not a prayer in heaven. I should have quit while I was ahead at the last beaver crossing. There is no way around this. I don't even see a little herd path leading off in any other direction. It just stops here at this beaver flow or vlei.
So now I had another choice to make. I brought a ground cloth and a tarp with me, but I really didn't want to lay down on the ground all night. So I looked at my watch. I had to decide how much time it would take me to get back, and was I up to it. So assuming I'd walked 8 miles, that would mean a round trip one day of 16 miles, which is a pretty rough trip for an old man. However, I figured 8 miles at an average of 2 miles an hour, 4 hours. Sundown is about 8 o'clock. So if I hoofed it, I could get back. I didn't feel like taking the time to break out the food bag and make dinner. That would have taken way too much daylight. I did have some goo, these little packets of, well, basically sugar and amino acids. I did stop and start taking breaks more frequently, trying to ease my feet and my thighs and calculate how many miles of trail I had left versus how much daylight.
All right, this is Little Otter Pond. And it is currently 6:55, which means I've got an hour before sunset. Hopefully I can make it back. Made it back to the car just at the end of twilight. Seriously exhausted. Lots of water, something to eat. Oh, and some vitamin I. It's been a big day.
Would you have done anything differently? Were there any good parts of this trip? Sure, first I found out that I can walk 15 miles in one day. Second, I learned that I will probably never walk on the Buck Pond Primitive Corridor again.